All right, do you guys want to kick off? It looks like the participants are there. Good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Malone. I'm a Aspen High School parent volunteering to moderate this session. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Colorado Western Slope College Fair. This workshop is titled Engaging with Your Schools, College Interviews, and Campus Visits. Our presenters today from Whitman College, Madison Holmbeck, from Eckerd College, Dylan Cassidy, and from Fordham University, Chloe Sigillito. I hope that was close, and please correct me. This will be a 30-minute presentation followed by a 15-minute question and answer session. And I'd like to let you know that it's being recorded. I will hand it over to you, Chloe. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. You were pretty close. My last name is a doozy. My name is Chloe Sigillito. I am from Fordham. Super glad to be here today with Dylan and Madison. We have, a brief PowerPoint presentation just to try and go over some of the details of what it might look like for you to engage with different colleges and universities. Before we get started, I'm going to have each one of us tell you a little bit about ourselves very briefly, maybe just give you a quick sense of, where our colleges and universities are located in the world, and then we'll get started with our presentation. So first I'll turn over to Madison.
Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Madison Holmbeck. I'm an Associate Director of Admission at Whitman College. Whitman is located in the wonderful town of Walla Walla, Washington, which is down in that southeastern corner of Washington State. Thank you all for being here.
Yes, and I'll go next. Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Cassidy. I'm an Assistant Director of Admission here at Eckerd College. Eckerd College, as you might be able to see from my background, we are located on the Gulf Coast of Florida in St. Pete. We're a small school, about 2,000 students, but we are here to talk about engaging your schools, campus visits, college interviews. So we are excited to jump into that next.
Awesome. Thanks, Madison and Dylan. And as I mentioned, my name is Chloe. I'm from Fordham University, which is located in New York City. Not the beautiful image I have behind me. I actually took this 2 years ago at the Western Slope Fair on one of the kind of jogs I did. So I'm there in spirit and in Zoom background. So as mentioned, we're really going to kind of talk through some of the different types of campus visits you can have. And one of the great things about having that conversation now is that the types of visits are much more broad than I think they really used to be, certainly more robust in range. We have different virtual opportunities and the ways in which that might complement an on-campus visitation opportunity if that's something that's feasible for you. And also how virtual opportunities can be a well-rounded experience in and of themselves if you are a student for whom visiting a college of your choice is not an option for you. And then finally, where might an interview kind of fit into all of this, and kind of what to prepare and what things to think about and why what we're spending time talking about is important. And then we really want to end and kind of focus in on all of your questions. So if as we're talking, you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. You can either chat to the whole group, or you can chat to Madison, Dylan, or me kind of individually, and we'll try and work it in. But at the end of our presentation, we'll also take questions through the Q&A or through the chat function, as well as if you all pop off mute, you can ask it that way as well. So with that being said, we'll just kind of launch into a couple of different types of campus visits, specifically the virtual visitation. So my current job at Fordham is actually the Associate Director for Campus Visitation, which is a super no longer correct title at this point because so much of our engagement work is virtual visitation. Opportunities like this, as well as college-specific opportunities. So this is a way for us to really interact with and engage with students, with families in very different formats. It also allows us in a single session to welcome students from around the country, around the world, to hear, on a Tuesday afternoon about Fordham University. So I think that's something that, we really enjoy. So there are two different types of virtual events that many colleges offer. The first is live, something like this. It's happening while you're in it, Anything can happen. You might experience technical difficulties. You might be able to have kind of those off the cuff interactions. Then there's also on-demand offerings, things that you can watch, that you can view after the fact. They're available at any time and you can engage with them on your schedule. And I think both are valuable. I would say on-demand allows you to kind of get a very base level understanding of some of the details about a college, right? You might be able to figure out where it is, what kind of majors they offer, what size is the university, different information like that, that really allows you to kind of say, okay, I'm still interested. Live events are a really great opportunity for you to ask direct questions. You can't find something on the website. You felt like there wasn't enough detail in an on-demand event, and you want to hear from an admission staff member, a student. Perhaps there are sessions that involve other staff or faculty members, right? There's really a lot of opportunities to get fine-grained information in a specific area. That's one of the things that I think virtual visits excel at. They allow for targeted, focused information to be delivered very easily between the experts, whether that is an admission staff or an external staff, faculty, or student, and with prospective students and their families. The other kind of component, I think, of virtual visitation is more campus-based. So less information and more about the actual campus of the college. So whether that's a virtual tour that you can do on your own time, a live virtual tour, those are the ways that you can start to get a sense of not only is this what the institution has, this is what it looks like. This is what it might feel like to walk around as I see other students doing it, or as I'm doing it myself, so to speak, through a virtual tour. And I think those two pieces are one of the biggest assets of a virtual visit. You can get a lot of information and you can start to get a sense of intuition and feeling. How would this feel for me? How can I see myself here? Do I see myself here? And along the way, do they have what I'm looking for? Do they have resources that I know I'll need? Do they have a wide array of options that I'm excited about? I think that kind of dynamic of being able to have both of those things answered through virtual visitation is super, super helpful. So just to give you an example of one college's way of doing it, and we're all different, at Fordham for virtual visitation, we have twice a week something called virtual information session. It is what it sounds like. It's the information session, live Q&A being answered by 2 admission counselors and 2 current students. So right away, you have multiple perspectives and lots of information coming to you. Once a week, we have something called RAM Talk. It's peer-to-peer. So it's our current students running the entire session. We have, thank goodness, nothing to do with it. They run the whole thing. It's one of my favorite programs to manage. And they just engage with prospective students. And they, our students, choose the topics. They run the entire thing. They manage the Q&A. And it's like this, a Zoom meeting room where it's a little bit more intimate and engaging. And they cover topics such as health and well-being in college, dining, what it's like to go to school in New York City, pre-professional opportunities, the whole gamut, and it's all through their creation. Then we also offer virtual opportunities each week that are more focused, but delivered through the admission lens. So we have what's it like to go to college in New York City, how to choose a college and a campus, admission updates inside the admission committee, right? More of those informational pieces about something specific along the way. And then we have one larger event that has a live virtual walking tour where our students are currently walking around campus, explaining what they're seeing, showing it to all of the different prospective students and their families. So again, that's just one college. That's the different range of what we're offering. And all of that is in addition to an on-demand virtual tour that folks can do at any time and an on-demand information session that folks can watch at any time. So I know that's a ton of information, but really just wanted to give you the widespread of what virtual visitation really can look like. And I think while it's very wonderful on its own, For some students, it might be in collaboration with an on-campus visit opportunity. So I think Madison's going to kind of talk about how virtual visitation might complement an on-campus visit as well, and how on-campus visits are distinct in their own ways.
Yeah, thank you, Chloe. I often think like the virtual visit is a great first step in getting to know a campus community. Often, like what Chloe talked about, it can get you ideas for colleges that may be really far away from you. And it helps kind of maybe start narrowing down a little bit of what your college list might look like. But I think we would all probably agree the campus visit, if possible, is the best way to get a sense for a campus community. There's only so much we can put into a video or into a live hour-long like presentation, but that doesn't take account for all the different like opportunities, the less tangible things that can happen during a campus visit when you're sitting on our campus or walking across to the dining hall or to a classroom or whatever that might look like. And so I think we would all encourage you, if possible, to do a campus visit for the schools that are really on your list. But I oftentimes think the campus visits can work really well in kind of narrowing down that college list, especially for maybe like my sophomores and juniors who are kind of just starting on this college process. I always recommend to visit the schools that are kind of around you. So, you know, within Colorado and within driving distance, to visit schools that might be really big, might be really small, might be in different locations, just so you can start getting a sense for what college feels right when you step onto it. You know, there's over 4,000 different schools to choose from. There's a lot out there. And so the way to kind of start narrowing down what might be the right fit for you for a college institution, I think oftentimes can start really well with the ones that are directly around you. I also remember, like, if I went on a vacation with my family or something, they would just be like, hey, let's go step onto this college campus. And so those types of opportunities that you might have in this next year really do allow you to get a sense for different types of schools. But I think what's great about campus visits is it gets you into the things that are going to be a lot of part of your day-to-day life when on a campus, for a college. And so that can be oftentimes colleges will have like class visits. So you can actually sit in on a class with a current student or in a class with a professor and be able to engage and see how lessons are taught at this institution. We can get you into the dining hall. I always recommend eating the food at whatever college campus you're looking at, because you'll probably eating it, you know, at least for the next 2 years if you're living on campus. For a lot of schools, maybe longer, maybe shorter, it just kind of depends, but try the food. It can get you into actual like buildings and into residence halls. I think all of us probably, when it's not in a COVID era, would be able to get you in and maybe stay overnight for seniors and stay in the residence halls. And so what's great about campus visits is it gets you into those like smaller pieces that do make up a big part of your college process. I think I oftentimes talk about the campus visit as maybe a little bit informational, but I think with like Chloe talked about, I think virtual visits can provide a lot of that information. And then I see campus visits as kind of adding on to that, to add on like the less tangible things, the feelings, the like environment, the culture of the students, and just like those small interactions that I think do make a really big difference for students that are looking for a college to spend their next, you know, at least 4 years at. And so when you talk about, you know, campus visits and when does that timing kind of quite work, I think, like I said, when you're first starting the college visit, start with those schools that are close to you. But as you kind of figure out what your college list looks like, campus visits can really fit in wherever. I oftentimes think they work really well after a little bit of some virtual visits. So you get the sense and the questions that you might want to ask when you're physically on campus. They can be before or after you apply, maybe both if that's really what you want to go and do, which is awesome. But you know, they can be before, so you really narrow down your list and you know the environment of school, but also after you apply and maybe are admitted. That does provide a different kind of lens when you're looking at a college campus community. And so if possible, I always recommend, if you know, after you're admitted, that you come back to a campus and kind of see it within those kind of eyes. But yeah, I think, you know, what campus visit does and what I've kind of talked about is it does take take advantage of the opportunities that you can't just get through a screen. You'll be able to do maybe an interview with a senior intern, one of our senior interns, or maybe one of our admission officers, which I'll have Dylan talk about kind of where does interviews fit into all this. But the campus visit just, I think, highlights the like less tangible things that are really important when kind of choosing a college. And so if you're able to, some schools might have fly-in programs that it's worth looking at, where we will actually pay for you to come and visit our campus community, all expense paid on us. Pay attention to those as you go into your senior year. But yeah, if you're able to visit, we definitely recommend visiting, just because that's the best way to get a sense for any college campus.
All right. Well, thank you, Madison. That's some good information. You should all consider possibly visiting those campuses at least once you've been admitted to those schools, or even this fall when you're looking at colleges. But I'm here to talk about the interview process and college interviews. So I work at Eckerd College. We're generally a small liberal arts college, and I thought this was good for me to talk about because when students visit our campus, we try our best to have everyone meet with an admissions counselor after their campus tour. We try to make it an individual meeting, but it really depends on how many visitors we have. If we have 20 visitors, of course, we will not be able to have individual meetings with everyone. But if we don't have too many visitors, we have every student go in for what we call an admission interview. But here at Eckerd, our admission interviews, and I don't talk for every school here, but for us, it's not a chance to challenge you with tough questions. It's really a chance for us to just see where your head's at. Maybe we can help answer some questions for you. But we, as the admissions counselor, may ask the student some questions about their high school experience. So generally what I like to know is just how your academic performance is throughout high school, and then how that leads into what college major you might be wanting to get into, or why you've decided to visit specifically Eckerd College. For us, most of our students are traveling from out of state, so they are usually pointedly visiting Eckerd College. They took a flight or a really, really long drive to get here. So for us admissions counselors, it's good for us to get to know, okay, why'd you take a flight here? Is it, our environmental studies program specifically that you're interested in? And then maybe we'll ask you about your experience in the field. We do not expect high school students to have a ton of experience in their major that they're interested in, but if there is a club or an organization that the student is involved in, we want to hear about it. Now, what does it mean when it says optional? At least at Eckerd and at most schools, interviews are not required for admission. When it says it is optional, it means you are not required to do an interview. But for us, I think it makes sense to do an interview if, for some students, if there have been any changes in schools, or if there have been any difficulties throughout the 4 years of high school, if there is any sort of IEP or any sort of learning differences, or if there's really anything that you feel that you as the student would be able to better explain through a virtual or an in-person conversation, that's when it might make sense to do an interview. Again, it is not required, and we will pretty much see all this information on your application. The application is a really good time to even enter in additional information. If there's some gaps in your schooling, you can enter that in the college application. But if you feel it might be best fit to explain it to us over the phone, through a Zoom interview or in person, I guess that's when you would schedule an interview. Now, speaking of different types of interviews, only the past 2 years or so, we even started offering virtual interviews. Before COVID, I used to just do phone interviews when students requested them. But now we enjoy doing Zoom interviews. It's nice to, put a face to a name when we meet with students. So whether it's a phone interview, we still do phone interviews. We can do a Zoom interview. These interviews typically last maybe 15 to 20 minutes at most, at least for me. Maybe that's because I'm a fast talker. But we admissions officers are pretty busy, so we normally don't take more than that long to have these interviews. But we also do the in-person interviews typically after the full campus tour. And here at Eckerd, we do have student interns perform interviews. Specifically, we offer campus visits on Saturdays, and us admissions counselors are typically not on campus on Saturdays. So we actually hire a group of student interns to hold these interviews on Saturdays. So on a Saturday visit, you might have a meeting with a student intern, but I promise you they're very much so qualified to hold these interviews. And they, if anything, will take more detailed notes on these interviews than us as the admissions counselors will do. So whether you're meeting with a student intern or an admissions officer, I encourage you to take it seriously. I think we can go to the next slide. Speaking of interviews, let's talk about how to prepare and why it is important. So rule number one, how to prepare for these interviews, do your research. If you show up to an interview with zero knowledge on the college, it's a waste of your time, and it's probably a waste for my time as well. So my first question is always, well, I'll give away my first question is always, what brings you here? Why did you decide to request an interview with Eckerd College? So if you come in and you're like, oh, I don't know, I wanted to learn about the college, probably a waste of our time. So at least do your research. Let me know why you are interested in the college so that maybe I can talk more about that specific program. And in doing your research, it's good to at least read up on the specific program you're looking at and just general stats and figures on the college. If you ask me how many students go to Eckerd, I will probably refer you to our website. It's simple things like that that you can find online that I would, or a brochure that I would say, you know, not to waste your time or my time in doing the research so that we can get more into the deep dive and talk specifically about unique programs, and we can really see if our college is the right fit for you. And my last piece of advice on how to prepare is be your most authentic self. I think you will best find the college that is the absolutely right fit for you as the student if you are your most authentic self. I know that's really cliche advice, but at least when I was looking at colleges, my mom did a lot of my college search for me, and the schools that she put on my list ended up not being schools that I was interested in at all. And then I moved to Florida. But for you as the student, I think it's good to really ask yourself, what is it that you're looking for? Does the schools you are looking at have organizations you want to get involved in, and then have also academic programs you are interested in? And then ultimately, does it feel like the right fit? Is this somewhere that you could see yourself at home? And then lastly, why it is important. Speaking of right fit, it's a great way to see what college is the right fit. That's a great way to learn more about a specific program. Although all of the colleges will list a pretty detailed explanation on each major, us admissions counselors will have specific stories that you might not find on our website. So in these conversations, we might be able to tell you, oh, hey, we actually have a student who just graduated and is now working for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is a story I was just telling the other day. That's something you're not going to see on our website. So I might be able to tell you more about specific outcomes that students have gotten involved in. And then also, that's what us admissions representatives are here for. We are in this job because we like to talk to students, and we want to tell you about the amazing programs that we offer. So make use of our time, make use of your time. We are here to help, and we encourage you to reach out if any questions come up. Maybe it doesn't necessarily lead to a full-on interview, but hey, if there's a quick question we can answer, I'm happy to do so. Speaking of questions, we would like to open up, since we've been talking for 20, 25 minutes, if anyone who is attending this has any questions or anything you would like us to dive deeper on or maybe give advice for, we welcome you to ask them.
Good morning. May I ask one question? Natasha Flaherty out of Granby, Colorado. When you talk about explaining changes in schools, our school did not offer an online accredited program. So my teenager and most of the high achieving students went to Connections Academy. In this COVID environment, do you expect an explanation of that transfer on the app or in an interview? How do we want to address that in this 21st century COVID environment?
That's a good question. I meant to talk about that too. I think everyone who is attending high school over the past 4 years is going to have a unique experience. So I would say, honestly, for that, we get it as admissions counselors. We've all been through a lot. So I would say if there was a change in schooling due to COVID and due to certain accreditations, I think you'd be okay briefly explaining that in the additional notes part of the application. Oftentimes, transcripts themselves will explain it for us. And, almost a lot of schools, you can tell in spring 2020 when they went to just credit instead of offering grades. So we see a lot of that. So I think it's just fine to explain that in the application specifically. But if it really negatively impacted the students' grades, that's when it might be worth like a more specific conversation with us. But I don't know if the other two would have anything to add on that.
Yeah, I was just going to say there is like a Common App. Most of us use Common App, has like a community disruption like section of the application where either the student can fill it out, but there's also one for like counselors. So oftentimes counselors will give some insight to say like, hey, this is what happened for the student, or also like, this is why our schools changed this grading policy, or whatever that looks like. But there is also a community disruption section typically now with COVID that a student can utilize for kind of that like brief explanation. But yeah, I think it's always helpful. Like, we understand as admission officers that there's been a lot that has been going on for high schoolers, and usually we're reading with that kind of insight in mind, but you never want to leave us guessing, right? Like, you never want to like leave us like kind of assuming what's happened. We usually are pretty on with what, when we're seeing like a transfer during like their junior year because of, COVID, those types of things. But utilizing the additional information section or the community disruption, or if the school's really high on their list, sitting down and having an interview. But it doesn't need to be like a super long explanation. I think we all understand that this has been a whirlwind for high school students, and there's been a lot of changes. And so we understand that. And so they don't need to spend 5 hours like creating this like perfect statement or something like that. Like, it can be a brief 2-sentence saying like, hey, this is why we changed. It wasn't credited. We all went to this like program.
I received another question in my direct messages. I'll leave it anonymous, but I'll ask the question, and then if Madison, Chloe, you have anything to add, I welcome you to. The question says, the person has a question about the early admissions process and how much benefit it gives versus regular application. Here at Eckerd, our early action deadline is November 15th. After November 15th, all applications are considered rolling admission. And for us, there's really no significant impact on it. We do not offer early decision, which is a binding application. For us, it will not have a serious impact. However, I think subconsciously, I, as the admissions counselor, typically will see stronger applications early on, and we often are able to send admission decisions earlier, but students will qualify for the same amount of merit scholarship, even if they apply for rolling admission versus early application. And it's just best to apply early, because last year we ended up we stopped admitting students after around February. So for us, it's helpful to apply early action, but it will not hurt the application badly. Do you two have anything to add?
Yeah, so I think this is one of those moments where I'm going to advocate for Google and Microsoft, in that I would recommend having a spreadsheet, whether you use Google Sheets, if it's something you as a student might share with your family, or Excel spreadsheets, just any kind of spreadsheets, because most colleges have similar timelines and approaches, but not identical. So for example, you heard one example from Eckerd. At Fordham, our deadline for both early action and early decision is November 1st. And then we have a regular decision deadline of January 1st. And there are two separate pools. Neither are rolling. You receive your decision at a specific point in time. You are eligible for the same scholarship, admission, honors program, regardless of if you apply early or regular decision. Dylan kind of mentioned one of the advantages of applying early. It's that you have your information sooner. So if you apply early action by November 1st, you receive your admission decision from Fordham by December 20th, and if admitted, your financial aid package by February 1st. You have until May 1st at Fordham to make your decisions. That's many months with that information. If you apply regular decision, you would submit by January 1st and have your financial aid package and admission decision no later than April 1st. So again, a little bit shorter of time with that information. But in my opinion and in my experience, the question, is there an advantage, is very student specific. because there are some students who are the same in October as they would be in January. And then there are some students who are really in the first semester of their senior year. And this, I think, is as relevant as it might ever have been this year for students really looking to show success in their most rigorous and challenging classes, or really looking to solidify an upward trend, right? Their senior year courses are the best success they've ever had. It might be the most stability they've had in their classes for the past, 4 semesters. It might be some of the most rigorous classes that they're changing. And the only way we see that full picture, that full first kind of half of senior year, is if students apply regular decision. So for those students, it might be incredibly advantageous to apply regular decision, whereas for others, they've been at a very high level of success throughout high school. They've always taken challenging classes. They're continuing to do so. And kind of what their results are very stable throughout their high school years. And what benefits them is knowing a decision earlier on and having as much information as soon as possible. So I think those are just kind of 2 decisions as well. Madison, I don't know if you have kind of different dates and deadlines to really hammer home the point that all colleges do it a little differently. And I swear spreadsheets are helpful, but I turn it over to you.
Yeah. So yeah, Whitman doesn't actually have like early action. So we don't have a application process that you can hear earlier that is non-binding. Whitman only has early decision. And we have 2 early decision deadlines. So we have early decision 1, which is November 15th, and then early decision 2, which is January 10th. We do admit more, we admit a higher percentage of students that apply early decision. Oftentimes, kind of like Dylan said, the students that are applying earlier do seem to have a better sense of who Whitman is, and put together really strong applications. But I think what's I think interesting is each school fill a different kind of percentage, maybe with those early, especially early decision schools. And I think that is important to pay attention to for each individual school you're looking at. Like Whitman only fills about 1/4 to 1/3 of students early decision. There are schools that fill up to 60-70% early decision. And I think all of us would probably say make the best decision for you. We never want you to buy into a early decision agreement that is binding if you're not ready to do that. But each school, yes, I think does it differently. Each school fills a different percentage of the class, maybe with early action or early decision. But we ultimately want you to make the best decision for you all. And those are questions you can ask each of us as your admission officers. I would love to sit down and have a conversation with the student and be like, hey, I think your best opportunity to get admitted to Whitman, if this is where you want to be, is going to be going this path. Maybe it's going to be early decision 2, like Chloe said, to get that first semester of grades on your transcript instead of applying early decision 1, if Whitman's where you want to be. And so starting to have those conversations, I think early on, but also making sure you all don't feel the pressure that you have to apply early decision to a school. I think oftentimes college has become this thing where it's hyper competitive, you have to apply early in order to go to schools. And that's a thing that gives you the most kind of credit or whatever. We want you to make the best decision for you and your family. College is a big decision, and we want to make sure that you have the right resources in place to make the best decision possible for you as you go about this process. But yes, I highly recommend spreadsheets and everything like that to be able to keep track of all the different deadlines, the financial aid deadlines. Please keep track of those financial aid deadlines. I will track down forms. I will call you, everything like that. But those types of things that are just different for each individual school. So yes, I think, Natasha, do you have a question?
I do, thank you. Speaking of early admission, I have a teenager who has 2 schools in mind, very tech-oriented, likely to be a National Merit Scholar. Does it hurt if he chooses more than one? I mean, is that information shared? I just watched a neighbor's son who was very high achieving, won the world competition in computer programming, but had applied to 3 schools early. And then as a result, here's a kid with flawless records. Is it better if one goes early decision just to choose the dream school? Is it harmful to choose more than one?
So I think I'll speak for Fordham as we have an early decision. I'm going to kind of pretend that I didn't hear that a student applied to 3 different early decision schools. Because the concept of early decision is that it's a binding contract if you're admitted. So
Yeah, that's
If-
kind of how I understood it. So, it's really
So if that student had gotten into all three, he would have been facing some very challenging conversations with colleges, because he would have been reneging on two of those binding contracts. And I mean, look, these are students, and colleges really do want to support them. It's not like a contract in which, you know, we would be out for the student, but it would be looked at pretty negatively by colleges, who have to have those conversations with the student. So yes, first and foremost, if you're applying early decision, one school, apply early decision to one school, please, and only one. And I think early decision is really for a very small number of students, as exhibited by that one, right? Like, he really had three schools that he was interested in. So in my opinion, and I'm only speaking for Chloe here, he should have applied early decision to none of them, because he wasn't ready to make a full commitment to anyone. He wanted to kind of have information, and that's great. That's really what early action is for. It's the student taking action early, getting information early, being able to make a decision early. Early decision, you really need to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is where you want to be. You need to have had conversations with your support team, your family members, anyone involved in the financial aspect of a college process, because different schools can meet different levels of demonstrated need. And you really need to have, not just know that this is a good place for you, but kind of realize that, like, not only is this where I want to be, I also know I don't want to go to a bunch of other places. It's for a very small subset. I never try to talk a student out of what they want to do, but I find myself having very in-depth conversations with students who say they think they want to go early decision somewhere. And it's only because, you know, I remember what it was like being 17 and 18. I couldn't decide what kind of ice cream I wanted, let alone committing that, like, this is where I wanted to be for 4 years, because usually when I was ordering ice cream, it was for later in the day and I wouldn't know how I was feeling. And when you're 17, like, you have no idea how you'll feel when you're 18, 19, 20, 21. And so I think, again, the students who have done that whole thought process, have really run through the gamut, is a small number, right? Many students want options open to them. And so I think applying early decision is for a very small pool of students. And if there's any type of what I would call waffling, like, well, this is appealing over here, well, this is appealing over here, early decision isn't the right fit for them. And that's okay, right? Colleges have different types of application process for just that reason, right? We're trying to provide a buffet of options so that students can pick the one that makes the most sense to them. Dylan and Madison, I didn't mean to leap in there, but I just really had to say that about the multiple ED schools.
Yeah, I was stunned too. I'm like for our teenager, there is definitely the dream school, and it's been that since I think middle school. And with hopefully a national merit status, it's like, okay, you have a chance of going to your school. But yeah, it was kind of interesting watching others apply last year. And as you said, versus a early strong application versus a binding decision. My understanding of binding decision is exactly what you said. This is your dream school, you're committing. But for a strong candidate, does that make them stronger if they're willing? Our teenager's been very singular in the focus in mathematics, applied mathematics, and has a school in mind. Does that make it a strong application?
I mean, I think that is where each school probably does it a little bit differently. Like, I mean, I think when we see a strong application that comes in early decision, like at Whitman, like that means that you want to be on campus, that you're excited about us, and that you put together a really good application. We do, like I said, we do admit higher percentages of students in early decision because of those reasons. You're going against also a smaller pool of students. You're going against like hundreds versus thousands. And so, right, just those chances of getting admitted. And so, like, I think if that is where your son wants to be or your child wants to be, and like they're very excited about it, and that's been their singular focus, they've done their visits, they've done their research, they've met with the people they need to meet with, and they're excited about that school, I think absolutely. Like, I think all we ever want is for a student to make the best decision possible for them and have also the buy-in with the family, with their entire family too, because it's, as much as it's the student choosing, it is also the family choosing as well. And students may not want to think it that way, and parents, you know, it's a good little balancing act to make sure that it's their process, but you also have to be bought in. And so that's my biggest recommendation is, like, if they're excited, they've done all the work and the research that they want to do, then absolutely, I think early decision is a great option for a certain amount of for certain students, but it's not the right decision for everyone. And so we just want to make sure that you're not feeling pressure from us to ever go early decision if your student's not ready. Yeah, okay. I think Ellie, you had a question.
Hi, yeah, I'm Ellie. How important would you say it is that I reach out to different professors and learn about specific programs at schools?
It's a really good question, Ellie. You're probably going to hear this a lot. The biggest kind of commonly used phrase in college admission is like, it depends, because truly it depends. Every college does it a little bit differently. You know, for Fordham, we're a mid-sized institution. We have 9,000 undergraduates. We have, hundreds of faculty members. And I'm going to be pretty honest with you. At this stage in the process, hearing from a prospective student is not the top priority, and responding is not going to be the top priority of a faculty member, right? They're focusing on teaching our undergraduate students and being there for them in office hours and, managing any number of things. And that's great. That's how we want it. But we also know that can be tricky, right? Like, I don't want to encourage you to just kind of reach out to faculty members at a bunch of colleges and universities, knowing that like, some might get back to you and some might not. And the ones that don't might leave a bad taste in your mouth. And that's fair, right? Like, I don't like not getting email back either. But just knowing and understanding that some places, it's just not very built into the culture to have faculty respond to prospective students. At other places, it's super built into the culture and they're very responsive to, potential students. I don't want to generalize. Most often those are kind of smaller colleges that have the ability to do that. Kind of mid-sized, larger institutions just don't have the bandwidth because they have more undergraduates that, they're working with, perhaps graduate students. But I would keep an eye out for, specifically in the virtual space, opportunities where faculty or different staff members are present and talking about different programs, right? Because those are times where the admission office has kind of done the legwork of like, come to this thing where you're going to talk about your specific area, and the faculty or the staff are ready for it. And they'll be very open in those instances to speaking about their program or their field or the department. So keeping an eye out for those, I think, are really good. And in those moments, faculty member might give out their email. And then I'd say if that happens, be like swift and quick and send a thank you and put your name in front of them. And maybe you might kind of build a rapport in that way if you had a follow-up question. But that would be my recommendation. I don't think it's crucial for you from a admission perspective to reach out. If it's crucial to you for a decision perspective, I would find ways to reach out or make it happen or get that information in any number of ways.
Piggyback off of Chloe and add that, yes, it very much so depends. Eckerd, we are relatively small. We have about 2,000 students. And if you are looking to speak with a professor right now before you have been admitted, I would almost recommend to hold off just because, I think the admissions counselors are your first point of contact when considering an institution. However, a couple of years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, I had a student who was specifically interested in this really niche program that we actually offer, and it was marine geology. And she wanted to speak to a specific professor who had done this certain type of geological research related to climate change. And the student was admitted, and we were also offered a research scholarship related to that type of field. So in that case, I was happy to make the connection with the student. In some cases, you might be able to reach out to the admissions counselor and say, hey, I'm interested in this really unique field. Can you tell me more about it? Or do you know someone who can? Because I am not a marine geologist, so I will not be able to tell you much more about it other than you examine rocks. So beyond that, that's where I might say, hey, we actually have a professor who can talk to you about this. And the student ended up getting the research scholarship during their first year. Don't think it was because they had reached out to them about it, but I think they were able to get more information on the program and then use that in their application and then get the scholarship for it. So in some cases it's helpful, but I would say maybe do that if you've narrowed it down between this school and this school and you're deciding. Again, to go back to the theme of making use of your time and our time.
I want to be conscious of time. I think we are at about 9:47, and I think this was supposed to go to 9:45. Am I correct? My co-presenters, I think so, right?
45
correct.
Mountain Time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. I don't know. Yeah. But we all appreciate you all coming and chatting with us. Please, if you have like continuous questions for us, stop by our like college fair Zoom room and ask us questions. We would love to get to know you all a little bit more and see if there's anything we can help with. But I don't know if there's like other closing remarks, but yeah, we just appreciate you all being here.
Thank you all for the questions.
Thanks, everyone. They were awesome questions. Hopefully it was helpful.
Well, on behalf of the Colorado Western Slope College Fair, I'd like to thank Madison, Dylan, and Chloe for taking their time to share their experience and perspective and knowledge with us. It was very helpful to everyone that attended. Thank you for attending the session. I think there will be another one, if I'm not mistaken, later this afternoon if you want to re-attend and ask some more questions. Thanks, everybody.